and talk with State Representative Jim Struzzi. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Representative Struzzi, good morning.
Good morning, Todd.
It's good to have you with us here today. Big day yesterday. You reintroduced the Cody's Law legislation, went right through committee, and will go before the House next. I know that has to make you feel pretty good.
Yeah, I'm truly honored to be able to reintroduce Cody's Law, which, as noted, was previously House Bill 2056. This time around, it's House Bill 185. Everyone's familiar with Cody's story, the brutal attack that happened on the Hoodoo Bug Trail, and the fact that the assailants, because of the way the current law is structured, could only be charged with misdemeanors. And that, to me, is simply unjust and unfair. So I met with former District Attorney Pat Doherty when this happened back in 2019, and we were able to look at the crimes code and come up with this change that will essentially take any assault on someone with a disability and make it an aggravated assault. And so I think that, it's really designed as a deterrent, Todd. We don't want to see these things happen, and I know that it means a lot to Cody and his family, and I've heard from people from all over the state and country whenever this bill was first introduced in 2019, looking for help along these lines, because these types of things happen more often than people know. So I'm very confident, and I'm happy that we were able to get it out of committee this early in session, and I'm hopeful that we can get a vote on the House floor in the next few weeks and get it over to the Senate and hopefully get it signed into the law as soon as possible.
The bill did get through the House and into the Senate, ran out of gas there in the last session, and it's kind of hard to figure why, but maybe you have heard from somebody over in the Senate that says this is the problem we have with it, and you'll need to change this language. Is that what happened, or is this essentially the exact same bill?
It's about the exact same bill, Todd. I'm not sure what happened. A lot of times, when you get into the heat of session, and it was towards the latter part of the year last year, things happen. I know the Senate gets a lot of bills from the House. We put thousands of bills through last year, and sometimes they get lost in the shuffle, unfortunately. But I'm going to make sure this time around that I work with my colleagues in the Senate, especially Senator Pittman, to see that we get this through, because it is just so important for these people, and I want to see it cross the finish line for Cody and his family and everyone else who suffers from a disability.
Yeah, certainly the pandemic could also overtake a lot of what normally would sail right through in a normal year, and that could have been a factor in it as well. But whatever it was, we're happy that it's moving again now.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's good that it's early in the session, so I think that there's some momentum now. I know that it had bipartisan support yesterday in committee. It had bipartisan support on the floor last time around, so I'm confident that that'll happen again this time, and we can see this happen.
Also in the House yesterday, consideration of the constitutional amendment bill that passed the Senate, and that continues to move too. Comment, if you would, on the constitutional amendment bill and what the House did with it.
Yes, certainly. It was House Bill 55. It was passed in the previous session, and any time that you want to do a constitutional amendment for it to appear on the ballot, it has to be voted on in 2 consecutive sessions. So it was voted on last session, voted on again yesterday, as you mentioned, and it did pass with some bipartisan support. This bill essentially will change at least allow the voters to decide if we should alter and change the Constitution to allow the legislature to have a say in disaster declarations. It would still allow the governor to make the initial disaster declaration, and then after 21 days for that disaster declaration to be extended, the legislature would have to vote on that. And I think that's, from the majority of people that I have heard from in the 62nd District here in Indiana County, that is what they want to see happen, because a lot of people feel like their voices are not being heard, have not been heard throughout the pandemic response. And I know that this has been a challenging leadership role for anyone in the governor's seat. And I know that a lot of hard decisions had to be made, but at some point, some of these decisions simply didn't make any sense, and it really didn't make sense for the disaster declaration to continue and to have the voice of Pennsylvania residents not be heard. I still hear from people who are struggling with unemployment. I still hear from people who are frustrated that they can't go watch their children play in sporting events. I hear from parents constantly that they want to get their kids back into school. The restaurant shutdowns that made no sense when there was no scientific evidence that they were contributing to the increase in the spread. So a lot of these things, make you wonder, and I think that's why this bill was put forward, to have more of a voice, more people involved in making these decisions. And I think it's important that the voters ultimately would decide this as it is a constitutional amendment.
We're on the third extension, which, as Senator Pittman told us yesterday, is not really an extension. It's a reintroduction of a new disaster declaration each time, and that should expire at the end of February, and we would expect that Governor Wolf would impose it again with yet another declaration. What language in the bill and in the constitutional amendment precludes him from just saying, okay, well, that one did expire, and you can go ahead and expire it, but I'm going to issue a new one now, and so that one will have its time period?
My understanding, Todd, is that the Senate will vote on this in February, and then it'll be put on the ballot in May. So once it's approved, if it's approved by the voters of Pennsylvania, that current disaster declaration will expire, I believe, in 21 days. And then the new constitutional rule would take effect where we would have to vote, we in the General Assembly would have to vote to extend that. That is how I understand it as it is right now.
So he could not then say, well, this one is something new. It's not the same old one that you voted to end. It's something I'm putting out brand new. He couldn't do that.
Well, with this governor, I'm not sure. There's a lot of things that happen that you do scratch your head over. I'm not exactly sure how that would work. I would think that is possible in some ways if he could alter it to create a new disaster declaration. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of battles over this, as occurred yesterday on the House floor. But ultimately, from my perspective, Todd, this is what the people in the 62nd District are asking for. They want to have a say in how these decisions are made. So hopefully, once this gets through, and if it does make it, we'll have some clarification on that, and we won't see this political wrangling that's occurring. Because I think it's just so vitally important that people are able to return to their livelihoods. Of course, we have to deal with this pandemic, and we are dealing with it. And I think everyone is on the same page when it comes to the health concerns, the vaccinations. We need to get more of those out there, obviously, and masking and social distancing. But ultimately, by the governor continuing to rule with executive impunity, I think it's just very difficult for people to fathom some of these decisions, and I think it's important that we do put it back into the hands of Pennsylvania residents.
Swing back to something that you mentioned a couple of moments ago, and that is that yesterday the Senate, with its unanimous passage of the pandemic relief bill, that goes before the House right now. I know that
yes.
It's not only a relief for everybody else, but it's a relief for members of the House to get these funds out, and the General Assembly trying to push these funds out into the public and put them to work.
Yes, absolutely. We were back in session Monday, and I believe we'll be pushing this through as soon as we can.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Governor Wolf is scheduled today he just announced that he's going to give his address for the year where he pushes forth his 2021 agenda. Did you get any previews on that?
I have not yet. I've heard some rumblings here and there, but nothing official. I know that we'll be meeting as an appropriations committee next week as well to digest the governor's budget proposal. I know this is going to be a very challenging year for all of us, with state revenues so low and the increasing cost related to dealing with the pandemic and unemployment. But I don't know what the governor's going to do. I hope that he is seeing the reality before us of expenses and decreased revenue, and that we can all work together. Because at this point, it's really I don't want to see a partisan approach to this, Todd. I think that at this point we all need to work together to do what's right for Pennsylvania residents, and I hope that the governor understands that, and that in his budget he doesn't have a lot of new proposals, new taxes, things like that'll simply put more burden on Pennsylvania residents. We have to start working for the people that elected us into office.
It's interesting to me that in past years it's always been termed as a budget address. Now he's just saying he's outlining his 2021 agenda. So he's taken that word budget out of it, but that's essentially what he's doing today.
Yeah, it is. I have not seen it yet. I understand there's going to be a pre-recorded budget address next week, so I'm not sure what he's outlining today. But I hope that it's good for Pennsylvania, and I hope that we can find a way to support it, and that it can be done in a bipartisan fashion. I'm frustrated with a lot of the political rhetoric that's still continuing to occur. I am working very hard to come up with good legislation that helps Pennsylvania residents. I'm working on bills related to mental and behavioral health issues. I'm working on bills, to find some alternatives to our energy industry, to come up with a plan. I know we're still dealing with the Reggie issues, but we have to look forward. And what can we do to help the energy industry? What can we do to create more jobs? What can we do to get people, back to work, to get this economy restarted? That's where we should be focusing our energies.
Well, it certainly is going to be an interesting year lying out before us. It's an off year, which means in an odd-numbered year, nobody's running for re-election, and so people wonder, well, will anything get done? But certainly you'll have your agenda to get forward before the voters and before your constituents, and we're going to visit with you next week about that, what you would like to see happening in 2021. Representative Struzzi, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on, Todd.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
It is the voice of Indiana.